Hello, everybody, and I'm not going to say good morning. I'm not going to say good afternoon, depending on where you are, but I'll say hello. This is Trends US's strategy session number 6, which means we've done now 5 before it. I'm not going to tell you which one is my favorite. They're all my favorite. It's kind of like loving all your children equally. This is a topic that couldn't be more relevant, given the latest developments in the Middle East and the signing of the MOU between Iran and the United States. Um, but before I get into the subject, first of all, let me introduce myself, and then I'll introduce the speakers and a little bit about the topic. My name is Bilal Saab. I'm the Senior Managing Director of Trends US, which is the Washington, D.C. office of Trends Group, headquartered in Abu Dhabi. The topic is the future of Gulf defense and the what I see is the growing roles of Ukraine and Israel. A little bit of reporting on that, a little bit of analysis on that, but I think there's plenty of room to dig a little bit deeper, and that's precisely what we're going to do with these two fantastic speakers who really bring some real world experience to this issue. We all once again know about the signing of the MOU just yesterday between Iran and the United States. And I think what it does is that it provides some breathing room for the Gulf states to think, I guess, less reactively and more proactively and strategically about defense, right? And that's exactly what we're going to do in this session. We're going to sort of do like a lessons learned exercise and see what future of Gulf defense might look like, and of course, investigate a little bit more what extra regional powers, or I would say, not traditional regional powers, could do to Gulf defense. Because typically we tend to focus on the U.S. security umbrella for understandable reasons. So let me just mention a couple of administrative things, and then I'll introduce the speakers. This is an on-the-record conversation. We will record it and then post it on YouTube right after it concludes, just like we've done with 5 previous strategy sessions. We will author a summary of it in case you don't want to watch it, you don't have time. So you could just read the summary, and we will post it on our website. I've mentioned the past 5 strategy sessions, and like I said, I like every single one of them. Topics have tended to obviously focus on defense and security issues, so this one is no different. We've had the chance to discuss U.S.-Iran policy, U.S. foreign defense sales, ITAR, unmanned surface vehicles, counter-UAS capabilities, and also the very important topic of space. So now we're going to delve a little bit deeper into something that I believe is going to be increasingly important for the future of Gulf defense, and that is the contributions of Israel and Ukraine into that space. But we have with us, like I said, 2 fantastic speakers, Jack DeSantis. Hey, Jack. And Asaf Orion. Let me just, like I said, briefly introduce them, and then we'll get right into the conversation. Jack DeSantis is the founder and CEO of Omira Systems. He's an engineer, spends most of his weekends basically just dabbling with counter-drone capabilities. And he's a former foreign volunteer, a drone pilot, and a battalion-level advisor on drone and electronic warfare in Ukraine. So definitely battlefield experience, and speaks quite authoritatively on these issues to the media as well. Asaf Orion is with 2 institutions, I understand, the Washington Institute and also INSS in Israel, international fellow with the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, a retired brigadier general and defense strategist in the IDF, that's the Israel Defense Forces. Obviously, you know who's going to be speaking on what, most likely. So obviously, Asaf is going to handle the Israel issue, and then Jack is going to tell us more about Ukraine. So with that, welcome to you both. Fantastic to have you. Thank you for your time. Like I said, we're going to run this for the next 55 minutes or so. And let me start with quite a basic question, which is sort of like a situational awareness question, which is, okay, so we're talking about Ukraine and Israel and their contributions to Gulf defense. how about we just investigate what they've done, right, so far, before we assess, before we analyze, before we project, right, into the future. What did you observe throughout the war in terms of contributions, real life contributions of the Ukrainians and the Israelis to Gulf defense? So I don't have any preference in terms of who to start with, but why don't we just start with Jack? What have you seen in terms of contributions and involvement of Ukraine in the war between Iran and the United States, and of course its implications for the Gulf states?
Yeah, hello everybody, and thanks, Bilal. So, as we have already probably seen in the media, there was the big tour of President Zelensky at the beginning, towards the beginning of Epic Fury. But even before President Zelensky visited the Gulf states, the Ukrainian counter-UAS experts from the group Nemesis, which is Ukraine's top counter-UAS military group, were already on the ground for some time before the president arrived. They were briefing all the local militaries in the Gulf and doing like a knowledge transfer and like advisory role. They were there. Specifically, I would highlight a briefing that happened at a US base in Saudi Arabia, the Prince Sultan, where the Ukrainians demonstrated the SkySafe system, which is like a software that it's data information fusion for all the different sensors, radars, and everything that tracks the airspace and the air defenses. They demonstrated this to the Saudi military and to the US military, who was also present on site. And then, of course, after the military side of things, the president came. There were like significant discussions that happened between all the Gulf governments and President Zelensky and his delegation, where they discussed long-term collaboration and like potential plans and what can we do. Frameworks were signed, and the main focus of President Zelensky was not so much on military cooperation. Ukraine made it very clear they did not want to be seen as taking part in Operation Military Epic Fury from a military point of view. So it was more of a defense industrial collaboration. That was the goal of President Zelensky. He wanted the Gulf states to work together with Ukrainian defense companies and vice versa, like exchange of counter-UAS technologies and open like long-term collaboration doors. And the military experts have since retreated. They have gone back to Ukraine because Ukraine is, of course, still in an ongoing full-scale active war. So those experts were needed back home. But the negotiations and all the communications and everything regarding potential defense deals are still ongoing. No Ukrainian defense technologies and systems that I know of have been fielded so far in the Gulf. Everything has put up to this stage remained on like negotiations or some like field demos. And yeah, that's where we stand today.
Fair enough. Okay. So operational deployment and also the visit of the president setting up a number of defense sales, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Asaf, I think we all saw the news, which a big deal was made out of it, of the deployment of the Iron Dome, but I'm pretty sure we missed a whole lot of other stuff. So what's your operational picture? What have you seen in terms of Israeli involvement in Gulf defense?
Well, I think we need to first recognize that we're looking at a network of defense assets and resources. The umbrella organization is, of course, US CENTCOM, and Israel is a member in this network. It benefits a lot because it gets strategic depth. So our border doesn't begin on the Jordan River, but actually you can see much further, and you have the time to shoot things down. So from all the drones that Iran has launched against Israel, almost none arrived at our country. And basically, it's a joint effort, and I'm saying this over the past 2 years or so. But then when we're asking on the other side, yes, we read that Israel provided Iron Dome, but not only gear, it provided a unit. So IDF personnel were protecting UAE skies, reportedly by the press reports. And there were some indications or insinuations that even maybe more advanced systems were deployed. And I guess that's the laser system, Iron Beam, which is not yet operational. So first you look at this evident reported element in defense relations. There's the glacier effect or the London bus. There's the part you see and the part you don't see. Upper deck, lower deck, so to speak. So I think we must.
Which deck of the bus you don't see typically? Is that the lower?
The lower deck, yes.
Oh,
The
interesting.
lower deck.
It's funny, I've never been on a London bus before. Okay.
So typically in the Middle East, you see the lower deck teeming with activity and the upper deck barren because people won't admit they're doing things.
Right.
So first step in every strategic relations is usually intelligence exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever Israel knows about incoming threats or targeting or things like that is potentially shared with partners. And we may speculate which partners by their proximity to Israel and their let's say the temperature of their Abraham Accord gauge.
And Asaf, does that happen bilaterally, directly, or do you have to go through CENTCOM?
Intelligence exchanges are always best bilateral and not multilateral.
Right.
But in terms of aerial picture and so on, it can go through American systems.
Right.
So early warning and intelligence, definitely for defense. But we also read that the UAE has maybe conducted some strikes in Iran. So potentially it may be some beyond defense, cyber issues, because cyber is another frontier in this war. Israel's experience in home front defense and protection is unfortunately one of the best in the world, because since 91 we are under fire constantly. And beyond that, you can say, okay, what's the big thing about exchanging in war? Well, as history doesn't repeat, but the cost of those not learning from its lessons do repeat. War is one of the best ways to look into the future of what's coming next. Actually, Israel shouldn't have been surprised by Hezbollah's FPVs drones in Lebanon, the fiber optic control, because Ukraine saw it 2 years or 3 years before us. So if you're watching those who are on the frontier, actually you know what's coming next. Not one for one, because every war is miserable in its own unique way, as Tolstoy said. But definitely, if you speak to those who are forward, you save some of the tuition. You don't need to pay the whole tuition in your own blood and treasure.
Yeah.
So I think in this sense, both Ukraine and Israel are like pioneers from future warfare, because they're currently fighting, and the knowledge is developed through friction in the battlefield. And those who are not yet in the battlefield or are second comers into this, can benefit and save lives and money.
Yeah. Let me ask you both this question just very quickly before we start actually evaluating these involvements of both countries, right? So it's nice that you both have provided an overview of what's actually happening, and now we need to basically analyze it and see, how extensive it is, how useful it is, what are the challenges and opportunities for further involvement. So before we get into that evaluation piece, I mean, let me just ask for like a quick reaction for both of you. Like, do you feel like this story of Ukrainian Israeli involvement in Gulf defense, is it overhyped or is it actually a big deal?
So I'm gonna go first. I would say uh, there is a lot about Ukraine, the Ukrainian defense industry, and the Ukraine-Russia war that is overhyped in the media. That is true. But I would say at the same time, I do believe that this collaboration is significant, and it can be significant even more than it is today in the long run.
Yeah.
Ukraine's defense industry, in the shape and form that it is today, it's a very, very new industry. None of this like drone warfare innovation that the entire world is talking about now existed 4 years ago. All of this is being built as we go, basically. And this was the first time that Ukraine had a major international cooperation, major international debut of its defense industrial base, of its counter-UAS technologies. Ukrainians have had some conversations and some exercises with NATO in Europe for a while already, but yeah, I would still call the Ukraine debut in the Gulf as like the big global debut for the Ukrainian defense industry, which is of course a big moment. It's a big opportunity. It also puts a lot of scrutiny and a lot of eyes on you, depending on how things go and how you perform, how your systems actually perform. Because, well, Ukraine is definitely the world leader in counter UAS. A lot of this stuff is being built centered around local needs, local constraints, and local options. And like we built something not necessarily because it's like objectively the best thing we could have built, but if you look at all the constraints and everything we had, this is what we could have built. How is that going to work, and how is that going to apply to every other military around the world who has different strengths, different constraints, slightly different use cases? Remains to be seen. But I had a very insightful conversation with the head of the Ukrainian Army Corps of Engineers, and I was talking with him about potentially doing something in the Gulf. And one of the first things that he told me when we talked, for example, about the interceptor drones, famous Ukrainian tool, he is immediately shut that down, and he said it doesn't make sense for them to acquire those interceptor drones if they don't have the entire layered defense ecosystem that we have that utilizes those drones. So it's a big task. It's a big opportunity. The execution remains to be seen. Like I said, all of those contracts negotiations are still ongoing. Nothing has been finalized yet. No Ukrainian systems have been fielded actively yet. So, yeah.
Well, you're starting to address the challenges, so hold that thought for a second. Asaf, is this primarily political theater with folks emphasizing it for political purposes? Are we actually seeing real security dividends here?
I think the first thing to recognize is that the obstacle that was crossed was denial and not the river in Egypt.
Yeah.
Gulf states trusted that they can live in peace with Iran, appeasing, cooperating, signing agreements, being nice. Well, when you live next to a tiger, feeding it steaks doesn't make it vegetarian. It's the same tiger. So I think there was a huge wake-up call in the Gulf about the need to protect themselves and about the vulnerability of the current energy sites and about the vulnerability of the future economy sites like databases and maybe fabs and AI hubs and so on. So first, I think this war created a necessity, a sense of urgency and necessity, which is a big driver. Second is understanding that the US cannot foolproof and fully protect against everything.
Yeah.
And what America is saying that the partners need to take a larger piece of the burden on themselves, I think it's right. You need to be able to protect yourself with some help from friends. Unlike the US, most of the Middle East players are underdogs against stronger enemies. So they need, like Ukraine, to fight their way up against a preponderance enemy, and not dominantly like the US coming from above. In this sense, fighting up is different than fighting down. Another thing to recognize is that at war, okay, there's the test of will, there's a tactical and technological test, but there's also a question of learning and adaptation. How good are you at outrunning the enemy learning and staying on top? And in this sense, I think there's huge value, and I talked about it before. If you manage to tap into the experience of others who have gone such trails, not your trail, but similar trails, you can save yourself a lot of trouble. I visited another country, and they're thinking of possible war scenarios, and they're saying we have public shelters, and we have sirens, and 3 minutes to go from from your home to your shelter. And I asked, is this a national siren going out at the same time?
Yeah.
They said yes. I told them this is so 1991 for us.
You mean Gulf War?
Because when Iran launched missiles at Israel, that was the first time when Israel needed to start contemplating what do you do under ballistic fire. And today we have micro sirens on our cellulars, understanding where it's coming and so on. So you don't need to shut down the whole place. So I think everybody will recognize that from one hand, you have a necessity of war. On the second hand, there's a question of who learns faster. On the third is that you need to find those who already ran it. Because as they say, the young horses run faster, but the old ones know the shortcuts. And that's a big benefit. And that being said, going with Ukraine comes with a cost paid in rubles. Going with Israel comes with a cost of reputation, or reconciling other issues, and thinking about what's happening in Gaza. Okay, there are many, nothing comes for free in this sense. There's always baggage. But that's a challenge of policymakers. They need to make the right choices for their own national interests.
All right. Well, perfect segue. You guys have both have started already to address the challenges. Why don't we just dig a little bit deeper into those? Because it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is that we're barely scratching the surface of cooperation. There's a whole lot more that can be done, except that obviously we have to recognize the challenges. So the challenges that come to mind for me, just basic, tend to be in different categories. So capacity, bandwidth, political, right, and technical. I mean, you got to tailor whatever cooperation you are doing to the recipient country. So why don't we just go through all of these? And I don't expect you to be experts in the politics of it, but maybe just a word or two from both of you. Perhaps they're going to be a little bit more sensitive in the Israeli case. But Jack, just operationally speaking, technically speaking, culturally speaking, right? What are some of the challenges for Ukraine to increase its involvement in the Gulf? And perhaps those challenges might apply to other countries too, but just try to sort of tailor those challenges to the Gulf specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the list of challenges for Ukraine in the Gulf is quite long, and I could take the entire rest of the episode just talking about that, but I'm not going to do that. So, first of all, it's a fine political dance from Ukraine's side as well, and from the Gulf countries as well. Because if you look at, for example, that week while Zelensky was touring the Gulf, Gulf states were also closing major deals with Russia, literally in the same week. And Ukraine was also being very careful not to show themselves as an active participant in Operation Epic Fury and in the war against Iran, because the last thing that Ukraine needs next to its ongoing war with Russia, it's open another front and to open another war. And then there is the fact, like I mentioned, the Ukrainian defense industry is very young. All of this drone and counter-drone development only started within the current full-scale invasion. It doesn't have like the decades and decades of institutional knowledge and expertise behind it, like most other countries have. And then the solutions being built in Ukraine are highly specific and highly integrated into the full ecosystem what Ukraine has. And one of the main stepping stones and why no contracts between Ukrainian defense companies and the Gulf countries have been closed yet, it's exactly because Ukrainian systems require their full ecosystem and require the knowledge that the Ukrainians have in order to be most effective. And like I said earlier, the Army Corps of Engineers was like immediately dismissing the idea of teaching the Gulf on how to build their own interceptor drones because they don't have the entire rest of the ecosystem to use them.
And Jack, tell me a little bit, just for the benefit of the audience, just tell me a little bit, just very briefly, about this ecosystem, right? It's because it's a full spectrum capability, right? And you got to go through the entire chain, right? So oftentimes the Gulf states focus on one aspect of that chain. So tell me just a bit more about this ecosystem.
So to keep it brief, when we talk about counter-UAS and air defense from the Ukrainian perspective, it's a whole combination of various like sensing technologies from different types of radars, acoustic sensors, imaging like literal thermal cameras, visual cameras trying to track the drones, mobile units, then all the way into Sky Fortress, Sky Safe, like their software that fuses all of that information into a complete picture, all the way to all the like kill means. And once you have detected and tracked the drone, how do you actually intercept them from like electronic warfare, which can have extremely complex configurations when the Russians use those like 16 channels GPS antennas, the Cometa system on their Geran drones, all the way to like mobile firing units, which are literally guys with a pickup truck with a big machine gun on the back, who move to intercept the drones. And then all the knowledge of all of the operators at every layer and every step in this system that it's there, and all the experience that they have with this. And it's still a hard job. And even the Ukrainians still don't intercept every drone that comes at them. We see hits in Kiev on a regular basis, unfortunately, in other civilian areas. There is really a lot that goes into it. And it all needs to work together, and it all needs to be on pair at the same level. And it all needs to be customized to the needs, strengths, and weaknesses, and terrain and everything of each country independently.
Fair enough. Asaf, challenges. Same question for you.
Well, let's start with the opportunity that I think there is a recognition of the value
Mm.
of the knowledge and technology accrued by Ukraine and Israel. It's understood that those are powerhouses in their fields,
Mm.
and that if you want to save years, money, and lives, you better run with those and not start the journey alone. Second, like Jack said, there's usually an overfixation, almost obsession on technology.
Mm.
It's not specific weapon systems. It's not a specific technology. It comes with an operational concept. It comes with doctrine. It comes with training. It comes with national culture and corporate culture of the fighting organizations. I don't think you can compare uh, um, armies that are very centralistic, and each operation goes up the ladder until approval and back, with militaries which are more mission command approach, with a lot of latitude for the field commanders,
Mm.
with a basic culture of improvisation. In the IDF, for instance, we have a very large element of reservists.
Mm.
These are not, draftees, young, 18 to 21, at the prime of their muscle, but at the low part of their experience. You get people who are business people, who are entrepreneurs, and so on. So they come to serve, and they say, "Hey, I got something better in my office. I'm bringing it.
Yeah.
I'll bring this," and they patch things together, which some bureaucratic systems just can't catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's something unique. You can't imitate it. You need to develop it and adapt your own, to adapt all those elements into your own culture. And by the way, we cannot really compare Ukraine to Israel. If you just look at the size, we don't have those expanses. If we lost 20% of our territory, we will be fighting in our specific homes, room for room. And other elements are, I think, geostrategic. When Gulf countries think about cooperating with Israel, they contemplate how Iran will perceive it.
Mm.
The Gulf was trying very hard to say, look, we're not part of this and so on. We're bystanders, but that's a poor argument when you're dealing with a serial hostage taker.
Right.
They don't care if you're involved or not. The important is that you scream high enough for the world to hear. It's a
Mm.
different concept.
Mm.
And right now, after the MOU, I'm sure that every Gulf capital is trying to strike the right balance between appeasing Iran because it's here to stay, and protecting against it without aggravating its, making it more aggressive towards them.
Yeah.
I think there are reputational questions and strategic questions. So Israel
Yep.
enjoys some kind of an attraction as a powerhouse, but in some places, and I think definitely after the Doha attack,
Mm.
Doha strike on Hamas,
Yep.
um, many in the region started thinking about Israel as a potential threat.
Mm.
So, do I want to play with that or not? The reputation of Israel's ongoing wars in Gaza are not well accepted in the public in the Middle East, and I understand why. This also explains the denial and the low profile of these corporations when you say no, there wasn't anything like that. So you enjoy it, but you don't recognize. It's like a mistress situation.
So, Asaf, I think
Uh,
you're saying two things here, just to clarify what you just said. So, because of the reputational cost of Israeli military involvement in the region, on the side of the Gulf states, they might put a ceiling or a limit to cooperation. But on the Israeli side, you also might put a ceiling because, well, what am I getting myself into if that country still perceives me as a potential threat? Is that correct?
well, I don't need to introduce you to the Middle East. When you need to choose between A and B, you usually go for both.
Yeah.
He's a partner. He's concerned. He doesn't meet all my expectations, but he's my neighbor,
Right.
so I live with him.
Okay.
It's a need to balance, I would say, the risk, the political risk inside, the diplomatic risk outside, the threat from Iran, the Israel's will to share.
Yeah.
I'm not aware of other reports in the past that Israel deployed Iron Dome with crews on foreign land.
Sure.
From the Israeli side, there's a question of technology security.
Mm,
You don't want your best defense systems
sure.
to fall into enemy hands, to fall into espionage, clause,
Yeah.
or to be exposed and expose the homeland for this.
Yeah.
And but we've also seen during those years, surely since the so-called Arab Spring, we saw Israel operating and cooperating with its neighbors in unique ways. So I think there's a wide aperture of
Mm,
what can be done, and it needs, as usual, to build on trust, to build on discretion, to be able to, out the activities only by consent and not,
mm.
by surprise. But I'm sure there's a huge potential there.
Fair enough. Okay, so I have good news and bad news. The good news is that you both provided and just an excellent overview of the challenges, and now we understand what we're dealing with here. The bad news is I'm going to ask you what's your view about how to overcome these challenges, or at least some of them, right? Because if there is an appetite, as Asaf is saying, for further cooperation on both sides, then we need to have some kind of a better understanding of how do you overcome some of these political, strategic, cultural, technical challenges. So I'm going to spend the last 20 minutes of this conversation just focusing on that. So why don't we just start with you, Jack?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge, like I said here, it's that a lot of the technology is built for specific Ukrainian needs, requires a lot of integration, a lot of expertise, a lot of knowledge. And at the same time, the Gulf, it's used to doing defense business in a very different way. It's almost like when you go to a US prime and you get a catalog of systems with their specifications, and you choose, I want this and this is how much it costs, I'm going to buy it, and that's it. It's very different with Ukraine. And also the way the Gulf does business, it's very different than the way the Ukrainians do business. So there is really like a need for learning and being patient with each other for both sides, because I
Yep.
do believe it can really benefit both sides in the long run. But where do I see the strength where Ukraine can really contribute, which is not just in its current counter UAS capabilities, but also if you look at the Shahid drone, which was all the headlines in this conflict. The Shahid was first licensed by Iran to Russia in 2023. Then Russia bought the rights to the design and started manufacturing it in-house. And then Russia also improved on this design. The Shahid became the Geran drone, and then we have the Geran 2. And now the Russians are trialing the Geran 3, which is the jet-powered version, which flies a lot faster. So current counter-UAS interceptor drones cannot intercept. the jet-powered version of the Geran because it's too fast for those interceptors. And then there is a lot more to it, like how did the Russians design their Kometa GPS guidance systems to avoid jamming and electronic warfare so that they can no longer easily be brought down using those means. And then how the Russians set up their mesh networks, how to use to like literally manually pilot those long-range strike drones instead of just relying on autonomous systems. All of those things, I'm sure that if the conflict with Iran continues, and that's outside of my expertise, I'm not even going to open that kind of worms at the
Oh,
moment.
believe me, nobody knows what's going to happen. So you're in good company.
Yeah. I'm sure that we are going to see a lot of the same or very similar evolutions from the Iranian side with their Shahids. And Ukraine has already seen that evolution. Ukraine is already at like the fourth generation with the Garan 3. So the moment the Iran starts adopting those improvements to the systems that the Russians have developed over the past couple of years in Ukraine, the Ukrainians can already tell you, hey, okay, this is this system. We've seen this from Russians, I don't know, in 2024. This is what it does. This is how we can counter it. And having that information right away, instead of having to figure it out, what is this drone doing now, having to try to recover one that crashed intact, which is rare and hard to do, and then reverse engineering to figure it out. Like there is a lot of time, money, and damage that can be spared and that can be avoided using Ukrainian expertise this way.
So you've identified essentially, and I'm not shocked to hear you say that, an educational challenge for the Gulf states. And your solution to that, also not shocked by that, is more rigorous, more systematic learning and training. And ultimately, let's not kid ourselves, some kind of a culture change, right?
Yeah.
But given that those take more than a week, and every single country has gone through these cultural changes, and especially as it pertains to achieving real jointness, right? Given that it's going to take a few years, are there any shortcuts whereby, as you said, Ukrainian operators are deployed in the Gulf and provide that kind of training, provide that kind of education to sort of like, turbo boost this cultural evolution?
Well, like I said in the beginning, the Ukrainian counter-UAS experts from the Nemesis group were already deployed to the Gulf even before Zelensky went there for his tour. But from what I heard from US personnel and from Gulf military personnel who were on the ground together with the Ukrainians and the Ukrainians themselves, the Ukrainians were always like very generic in their advice that they were giving. Which frustrated a lot of the people listening to their advice. But at the same time, the Ukrainians are also like walking a fine line. We don't want to give you all of the specifics because who knows when or how is this then going to get back to the Russians. And then it's going to harm us in one way or another. It's a difficult political, military, strategic dance. And like I said, also Ukraine doesn't want to be seen as actively participating in Operation Epic Fury in the war against Iran. Zelensky tried to focus this more on like the economic defense industrial base collaboration because the Ukrainian defense industry has been starved for capital ever since 2022 and even before. So they really need that. The Gulf has that. But of course, Ukraine needs to also offer something to the Gulf in return, not just, hey, now you have the same problem, please give us money. It's a difficult fine dance between are we involved in the war, are we not involved in the war, how much are we going to give to the Saudis who are at the same time also trying to preserve their relationship with Russia. And like I was saying, like the same week Zelensky was in the Gulf was also closing major oil deals with Russia.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to like this like fine line with like you're not here, you are not there.
So you both have now talked
It's
about it,
an
and I think
issue
Asaf.
that's a bit beyond my expertise at this point. Yeah.
No, fair enough. That's fine. I think you both have now put your finger on the nail, which is this balancing act. And I think Asaf, you said it quite clearly, right? So, and then it gets to a situation where how do you best manage that balancing act? Right? I don't think you can overcome it, right? Given the multitude of challenges that you both so expertly described. Asaf, you mentioned lack of trust, lack of interaction, the infrequent cooperation, right? So there's a ton of learning to do. But if you're looking at that problem set and you're briefing your superiors about, all right, well, how do we make it better? And once again, none of these challenges strike me as short term or easy. All of it is super complex and politically loaded. But given all of that, if you were to sort of apply a management approach to this and make it a little bit better, what would you think of?
First, I think we need to understand what cooperation is.
Yeah.
Go back to the beginning. Cooperation is using or being helped by other people's resources to solve your own problems. Otherwise, you would do it yourself.
Yeah.
Second, so you do it out of necessity.
Mm.
That's not your first choice. Many people's first choice is go it alone, but then they find it's too difficult to go alone.
Yeah.
And at that point, I must say, when you're seeking fast and simple, you're probably looking at the wrong places. That's not the family of problems we're dealing here with.
Exactly.
And it's not that Russia is going to disappear or Iran is going to be nice overnight. So prepare for the long run, for the long haul.
Yes.
Second, I think we need to understand, and this dawned on me some long time ago. We're not talking about Ukraine and Israel. We're talking about the future battlefields of whoever.
Correct.
You have here a preview of some of the things that we're going to experience, and some not yet. Some are yet to be revealed. This means that we're not talking about Ukraine against Russia. We're talking about facing a learning network, an operational technological learning network from China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, to say the least. There might be other partners. When North Koreans show at the Russian battlefield against the Ukrainians, it says something about the coalition you're facing. Now, people say, no, it's not a coalition because they don't share a joint command. Of course not. But it's a partnered learning network for military technology and operations. I think we need to recognize that and immediately understand also that we need our own network to do that. Otherwise, you would get to the battlefield ready for yesterday, and your enemy will come ready for today, if not for tomorrow. And when yesterday meets tomorrow, one side is in trouble. So that's another thing. Then, once you understand that actually people like China is looking at this from the sidelines, it looks at Ukraine, it looks at Iran, but what does it think about? Taiwan. So the learning is very personal. Bringing Ukrainians to the Gulf to teach is a strange thing, because the easiest thing is to take Gulfies to the front and to see how warfare looks. It smells differently, it looks differently. It's not a thing you see on PowerPoint. So you need to go in. If you go to learn surgery, you don't bring the surgeon to you to explain you with presentation. You go to the operation room. So I think it's a bit inverse in this sense. And also, you can't cook your knowledge without fire. Looking at it from behind. I think there was a Juha story about a guy who the king accused him for getting warm because he was looking at a candle so far away. And I think we need to look at, going back to the definition of cooperation, how do we pool our resources together?
Yep.
Those who have the knowledge and the capacity to produce, those who have the money to fund it, and then to benefit from the results. So you already understand that this is a logistical contest between camps, or at least partnerships. And you need to gear up with your partners. Otherwise, you fight alone. And Churchill said about this something. So, by the way, you can quite easily think about Gulf resources paying for like-minded force buildup, which will be used by them soon afterwards. And to surpass and overcome the obstacles and the challenges and so on, basically, cooperation is a human activity. It's human-centric.
Yeah.
It's not technology-centric. So first you need to break bread, build trust, drink coffee, spend enough time together, build a relationship. You need to be discreet because those sensitivities are not going away. But okay, how do you bridge, contradicting? This is the work of politicians. They live in this world of both, of not really going all the way with things. They live in gray, 50 shades of.
Right.
To build trust, you work gradually. You start with some level, you gain success, you build on it because it gives you a good competence feeling and a success experience, and it builds trust, and you go forward. And you start low, and you go to play. I was part of such efforts with Egypt since 2011, and we went from somewhere to places where my Egyptian partner, told me, if you asked me whether we would do it 5 years ago, I would tell you you're crazy.
Right.
So graduality is very, very important. And the main thing is to understand how to mix and match bilateral issues, which are more intimate, and networked issues, which are more integrative. Precisely. And I think we need to mix those two. Actually, it's not only a problem; it can be a lot of fun. It's a huge problem-solving puzzle, and it's solvable.
Right. It's just another perfect segue, Asaf, which I want to spend the last 5 minutes discussing. Clearly, as what I'm hearing from you, which should have been obvious right from the start, that this stuff is hard. It's really hard. Now, luckily, as you both know, over the past few years, CENTCOM has gone through this, I don't want to call it transformation, but sort of transition, evolution from a mere security provider, war fighter, into more of a security integrator, facilitator, and they've been pretty determined to play that role because it's consistent with U.S. strategic objectives, not just in the Middle East, but around the world. Given that that is now the mandate, the mission of CENTCOM, although lately, obviously, you've seen it more as a warfighter because of the war. How can all three parties leverage this U.S. role to make this cooperation a little bit easier?
Well, if you go operational, the bureaucratic walls and the policy walls are higher. One of the things you can do to mitigate that is to say, okay, I'm doing a training or an educational experience here. I'm experimenting not on Iran against Israel or Iran against Saudi Arabia, but on the brown state against the purple state. And this brings relevant people. You can go, instead of being official on track one, you can go to track two and then to 1.5, and integrate academy or academia people with practitioners, with past practitioners, and then you get the mix that allows you to explore, to cook, and to serve to the decision makers as a more ripe and ready dish. So they have to take less risk, and they have the deniability and so
Sure.
on. We all know that under CENTCOM, the IDF chief met his Gulf colleagues long before the Abraham Accords.
Mm-hmm.
So it provided the convening capacity, and it will be needed. And it's not only CENTCOM question. Actually, it's a question of, at the time, Israel was under EUCOM, and we needed to reach out to CENTCOM because our problems were there.
Yeah.
And I think these days, PACOM has a lot to learn from CENTCOM and from EUCOM because of those two active frontiers. So you may envision some seminars or learning process, which is around the threesome of the combatant commands, and which is all about a network of learning, operational, technological, and so on, to face the other network that we're looking at.
Jack, do you agree with that? Obviously, the United States is here to stay. Nobody's going to replace it, so to speak. But how can that role be leveraged to enhance the Ukraine Gulf cooperation?
Well, I think I already answered that in the previous question, like what I see the Ukrainians need to do, how to overcome the challenge, where they can cooperate more, and what could benefit them. And it's a learning curve for both the Gulf and for the Ukrainians. They need to learn to work together. There is a benefit there for both of them.
And how can the Americans make that easier? Is it consistent with what Asaf was saying?
I mean, yes, definitely there are like lessons learned between CENTCOM and EUCOM. And in the United States military, it's also not really learning what is happening in Ukraine to the scale it could, despite its involvement in Ukraine. I also did some work with Israel Aerospace Industries last year, my company, and we talked about electronic warfare, and I didn't even bring drone warfare up to them because I thought, oh, the IDF already has that figured out, and then we have seen that they didn't actually. The entire world, it's really not just a US, Gulf, Ukraine, Russia, Israel question. The entire world needs to start learning about how work because it's much uglier to have to learn that once the bombs are falling.
Sure. Yep. Well, on that note, I mean, I don't know about you, but I could easily spend another 2 or 3 hours just discussing this. This is really fascinating stuff, and it's such a pleasure to host both of you with tremendous experience and direct experience and expertise in these issues. Like I said, we'll do a summary of this conversation. We'll post it on the website. We'll share it with you both. But for now, I want to thank you both for your time, and hopefully we'll have you guys back soon. Thank you very much.